I'm Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger. And you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is made in collaboration with the Jewish Journal.
Today we got a bit of a special episode. On January 6th, Sunday, we received the following email. Hi, would you be interested to hear about how to survive Aliyah, make it through the IDF as a lieutenant colonel, have the door slammed in your face, have people stand on your shoulders when you remove money from the cash machine and peek over your shoulder at the pharmacist to see what types of medication you use, and much more? Obviously, the answer to that was yes. So we invited the sender of the email, Dr. Daniel Beaudoin.
No, it's Beaudoin. It's a French name.
Beaudoin. There was no chance I was gonna pronounce that right. But we invited Dr. Daniel Beaudoin to join us today, and we're super thrilled to have him and hear your story.
Yeah. So who did you stand on whose shoulders to buy medicine? What?
No, yes, nobody stood. I didn't stand on anybody's shoulders, but people,
no one would survive that.
I'm not sure.
It sounds like you had basically the classic Aliyah experience, which is
just the invading of privacy sort of thing. You're standing at the cash register and everybody is in line, and sometimes you just tell the people, maybe I'll just give you my password and take the money out for me. It's just, if they're not close to you, they feel they're missing out on something. I mean, the other day it's in Superfarm when I was taking out my medication, had a lady, they put this line to make sure that people, have give you
need
some
to
space.
Pull number. There's the line.
Not even without the number today.
No numbers.
Well, they know it's.
At some pharmacies they have it.
Some pharmacies know me, so the pharmacy where I live knows me, so I don't need a number.
But there's a physical line.
There's a physical line on the floor which says, please stand behind the line. Yeah. This line, it should indicate, right?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
And then suddenly I feel something warm, on my neck, and I look around and there's this old lady coming to my shoulder, and she's sort of like, leaning against me.
Standing over.
And, I said to her...
On a cold winter's day, that could be pleasant even.
No, but it's also, if she would see the medication I'm taking, that would be very embarrassing.
Right.
Depends on, most medications, I guess.
I don't want, when I'm buying my Viagra,
I
don't want old ladies to, unless, of course, it's for them.
Unless you're into her. Unless you're into old ladies, and then you want her to see that.
Yeah.
So it is...
That's my story. It's not your story.
Well, how do you know?
I mean, I don't.
So it's not easy, but from the short conversation we had leading up to the recording, I get the idea that you're not this like Israel hating kind of all negative type. It sounds like you're afflicted with the common ole paradox, which is the culture here is rough to acclimate to, but then there's something about this place that you just can't give up.
When I immigrated to Israel in '83 from Vienna, Austria, and I remember just going into basic training at the time, and I hardly knew Hebrew, and I thought I was a real smart guy, and they asked us in the lineup, who has a driver's license, and I said, I have a driver's license, and they said, great, so go peel the potatoes in the kitchen, you know. So that was the first time I understood that one has to be careful with what you say, okay? But regarding Israel in general, look, I couldn't have made a better decision than coming to Israel. I mean, when I look at it, in retrospective, I'm very, very pleased I came here. I think that what I gained is far more than the comforts, let's say, that I lost, and honestly, I don't lack for much, right? So I mean, everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's strange because throughout these years of fairly hard work, I don't feel like it was a very difficult
experience.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back, there were difficult moments, but I never felt that it was too much or doing officer school, for example, at the age of 27 is very unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with kids 21 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and physically that was a... Are you allowed to curse on this?
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was a real bitch. you
Yeah,
know?
it was. Yeah, there was a few people that were older with me in the army, and it was really rough on them. But it's not only just the physical aspect; it's also you're further along mentally.
True, but I can tell you that the difficulties in the army even everything out. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your ethnic background is, what your sexual proclivity is. It does not matter. The army has this way of making everybody bond.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a remarkable experience. Of course, I'd be very happy if we didn't need an army, okay? And I just want to remind people that we still do, in case they forget sometimes, you know, our dear listeners. But what I took away from the army as a colonel when I retired 8 years ago is a world without end, you know, and building a home here. Well, I don't know, what can I say? You know, it was the right thing to do.
In the army, what did you do exactly?
I was in the army
Don't
spokesperson. Army
dangerous.
I have to fidget with something. Army spokesperson's office for 7 years with the foreign correspondence desk, speaking on behalf of the military. And I was, for almost 15 years, I was the liaison officer to the international aid community in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
Wow.
So I was the right-hand man of a,
That's a packed role.
That was the go-between, the fixer, you know, between the Ministry of Defense and ICRC, the UN.
Yeah.
So you've seen some atrocities? How do you say it?
Atrocities.
Atrocities in the territories during your service. Have you seen, like, I don't know.
No, atrocities I haven't seen.
Okay.
And I've seen...
Violations. Like, you know,
Or
because
just poor conditions and shitty
you're talking about
life.
on both ends.
No.
Talking about Palestinian suffering, or okay.
I can tell you, I've seen a lot of things. I also know that I have been also personally challenged in certain situations where I think I may have overstepped my moral...
How so?
compass.
For example?
Well, well, it's just a tough one for me to come out with, you know. So I think I'll give it a skip.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's nothing dramatic at all, but it is something that reminded me of the fragility of being in uniform and
Having a kind of a monopoly on power.
the fact that you're the sovereign in uniform, you know, you have to be careful.
Right.
You have to be careful. That's why I also I'll be taking over an organization that deals with military ethics soon in Europe. Proportional, discriminate use of force, and the moral maturity that officers and soldiers need in the IDF in order to have a moral compass in a very, very difficult situation.
So, just a quick...
I hope this doesn't sound too philosophical.
No, it's very interesting,
you know,
actually. Your job as the liaison was actually to oversee kind of the funds from these organizations being passed to...
Well, actually...
To the pockets of the...
No, my job was, you know, in the West Bank and the Gaza, you have dozens of international aid organizations distributing aid to the Palestinians.
Uh-huh.
And the equation is very simple. For the aid agencies, what they are looking for is access, movement, and freedom of movement with no problems. You know, the military is saying, no, we need to restrict movement. We need to restrict access because of security concerns.
For them.
For
everybody.
Well, for the military, of course, and also for the International Aid Organization, because if you're coming through a checkpoint at Jenin, let's say, you know, or Nablus, and the military knows that tomorrow there is going to be a looking for a wanted, or I call them terrorists, but you know, you'll find in newspapers wanted, you know, call it whatever you want. There will be an operation tomorrow, and you can advise the UN that it's not a good time to distribute flour at exactly that point tomorrow. Maybe it's better to wait a few days. And then what you see sometimes is the cynical abuse of humanitarian aid, is that some organizations are part of the solution. They will come to you and they will ask for your coordination and your assistance. Other organizations will not. And that sometimes leads to problems.
They'll use it to publicize.
Correct.
Okay, I see.
Publicize what?
Like the fact that that Israel is violating human rights and restricting movement.
Correct.
Basically,
Correct.
they'll make a big storm out of a press storm out of it.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, and in the middle of this is the coordinator of government activities office, where I was the chief liaison officer to the international community in the West Bank and Gaza, so the World Bank, UN, and others, and it was trying to balance that act to facilitate that really sensitive meeting point between security and, you know, the Palestinians' right and for a fabric of life that is decent and dignified. Achieving that balance is it's a nightmare. Okay, I love the job, all right, because you need to get into a room with 22 people that each, you know, have a different view and try to come out of the room with, you know, an agreement on, bringing in, you know, before the disengagement from the Gaza Strip, for example, you know, how do you coordinate safe passages for the ambulances if there should be trouble? In military operations, how do you make sure, you know, that schools are not targeted, for example? How do you make sure that there is access to the silos where the wheat is, you know, and the food depots are? All this has to be coordinated, and this was part of my job.
So regarding, let's say, schools not being targeted, do you recall seeing problematic things on the side of the Palestinians? Because we've heard, you know, lately how Palestinians have stored missile silos and things like that under UN-sponsored schools. And then,
Yeah.
So was there any of that kind of stuff during your tenure?
We had to deal with many of these situations, especially in the Gaza Strip. The greater problem is one of asymmetric warfare, is one of Israel, IDF in uniform, Hamas running around in pajamas with RPGs on their shoulders, often behind the civilian population. Okay, and that is a very difficult operational situation. What do you do? The Americans have, you know, collateral damage, you know, but in what is easy for America to do is, you know, or let's put it this way. Well, I don't want to criticize any of it, but I'm saying that, let's put it this way. When it comes to Israel, there's a magnifying glass, all right? And we think, and I hope I'm correct, you know, and I'm not just brainwashed, you know, but I think from what I've seen and from my experience that Israel honestly does everything possible, you know, to lessen collateral damage. Does it happen work all the time? Well, no. Does it happen most of the time? I think yes.
You're talking about the Gaza operations.
I'm
mainly.
talking about the countless Gaza operations in response to rocket fire in Israel. You know, you asked about schools, right? I mean, initially your original question. So
Yeah.
what do you do, for example? You know, it's an ethical question that we discuss a lot because it has a lot to do with international humanitarian law. But what do you do when someone fires out of a compound of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency?
Yeah.
So do you hold your fire? Do you return fire? Even if it's a kindergarten, what do you do?
According to international law, you can do whatever the fuck you want, basically, I think. It's a war zone. So you right?
I don't know.
You're the specialist.
You've touched upon something. You know, first of all, not everything that is right is correct to do.
Legal, you mean?
Yeah.
Not everything that's legal.
Not everything that is legally right, correct,
Yeah.
is the right thing to do. But you're right, by the way. You are correct that even under the Fourth Geneva Convention, the Fourth Geneva Articles 2 and 1, you are allowed to return fire when you are in the face of fire.
Yeah.
Right. But the IDF has its principles, right? There are 10 principles. And the chief of the IDF, his job is to follow these principles. There's been a lot of debates recently in Israel about should the IDF be moral and how and who gave them the right to be moral. I mean, morality is the job of the politicians. The army needs to win battles, right?
Yeah.
So
Just for our listeners, what Noel mentioned is basically Israel doesn't have a constitution, but the one thing that resembles the most to a constitution isn't even the Declaration of Independence. It's something
the principles of the
a
IDF.
document called Ruach Tzal, which is the principles of the IDF, and there's 10 points there, which includes,
Any soldier has to abide, including the chief of staff. They all
Yeah.
have to abide to that document, and so it's what you were in the army.
Yeah, well, the 10 points really are, they're not mutually exclusive of international humanitarian law. Okay, so you've got the 10 points. They're an indication, a compass. But the military works, what you said about the politicians and morality, the truth is that also a soldier has to obey orders. He has to obey orders, and if he doesn't agree with an order, obey the order and then voice his disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a black flag waving over the order.
Right.
Let's say you're driving a car and you're the chauffeur of the boss. The boss says to you, "Listen, we're going to be late for the meeting. Okay, hurry up. You're driving too slowly." The driver tells him, "But I'm driving the speed limit." He says, "The hell with fuck the speed limit. Let's make it to this. Drive 120." The driver doesn't say anything, should he?
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's no... At 150, is that a black flag? 160,
Also
is that a black
depends on
flag?
where you're on the way to.
What's the law?
So it's a question, there is a lot of discretion for the soldier.
Yeah.
But you do hope that your children, and that you educate your children, and I think a lot has to come from the family. I mean, I have 3 children. One of them is serving in the military now. I have a daughter after the military. I have a 16-year-old that is running the house now and will be going to the military in another 2 years. My children go to the military. All I can hope, is that they learned something from their experience in our house. Where you are supposed to reflect upon your actions to the best of your ability,
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that has to do also with upbringing, I think.
It's worth mentioning that now every Friday there are riots in Gaza, in the Gaza border, and you have snipers who try to, block the riots and give some countermeasures. And it's interesting to note that for every bullet that the sniper shoots, there's a legal team that approves it.
Uh-huh.
And every bullet is documented and approved by a legal team in real time.
Yeah, that doesn't stop the world from basically saying we're
No, but I
atrocious.
see. Are you a legal lawyer or something? No,
No,
but you've
just a hobby.
got the information.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, so back to your service and your experience, apropos the Trump pulling the aid from UNRWA. What do you think about that?
I wrote a couple of op-eds on that lately. I don't know if you came across them. And nothing will happen. UNRWA is there to stay. UNRWA is too important. It's too important for the Palestinian cause to ever fail. So already there are indications that other Arab countries are stepping up, and the European Union is stepping up to fill the void that Trump has left by withdrawing, I think it is $300 million from UNRWA. UNRWA keeps the Palestinian issue alive. UNRWA is a very comfortable tool for the members and the UN, the representatives of UNRWA and the UN, to lambast and name and shame Israel for creating unnecessary checkpoints and unnecessary difficulties to staff, to the medical teams in moving around more freely. So,
but if we go back to the issue of morality, and you said you wrote an op-ed, what's your, in your eyes, was it a wise decision? Maybe UNRWA, you know, it's an uphill battle, or even it's an impossible win. But is it the right thing to do? Are they
enemy?
I wouldn't say fraudulent, but morally fraudulent organization, or are they doing actual good?
These are very. Let's put it this way: the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are having a very, very difficult time. Okay, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. All right. On the one hand, they have the Hamas, a fundamentalist, Iran-backed, Hezbollah-backed proxy terror organization. There's fear in the population of protest. You know, you don't just get up one morning in the Gaza Strip and protest, and it's not Tel Aviv, it's not Israel. You know. So it's remarkably difficult for them to find a way out of a mess that they are in, the Gazans.
They put themselves in that mess.
They are. The question is really, when you talk about humanitarian aid, and you mentioned that, are the beneficiaries or the Palestinians really receiving the aid they deserve?
And for how long will you do it?
What's the end goal? What's the end goal? Well, there is specifically with UNRWA, we have a definitional problem of what is a refugee. Because their definition of refugee is not the same as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, another organization that deals with refugees all over the world. So why do we have a special refugee organization dealing with the Palestinians? It poses an interesting question. Why is the definition that UNRWA uses unlike the definition internationally accepted worldwide? And why does that definition allow generation upon generation upon generation of refugee to be created, even if they're living in New York or LA?
It's basically like a self-sustaining problem.
Yes, it's
defining the problem in a way that self-sustains itself. So it's like we're gonna cause this problem to keep going.
It reminds me a little bit about in Israel. There's the poverty discussion, and one of the claims is that the poverty pays great salaries for hundreds and maybe thousands of people. So I wonder how many Europeans live from the Palestinian issue, like make a living out of it, and wouldn't want that to end, because then they would be jobless.
Like the whole European Union bureaucracy, for example.
What do you mean?
Well, it's. I think you're hinting at the organizational. It was part of my PhD. I'm identifying the organizational reasons. For example, no organization wants to work itself out of business, right? So it's not unlike UNRWA, right? I mean, it's not. They didn't invent it, right? Or the other UN organizations didn't invent it. Humanitarian aid organizations do a lot of good work, and they help a lot of people all over the world. I think what has happened is that many nations have simply outsourced the dealing with suffering to NGOs and other organizations. So instead of doing it themselves, they're very happy that there are organizations that do the work themselves.
Because it's a messy...
It's a messy business, and it's true, for example, that, if you really want to be from organizational theory, really cynical, you can say, well, if I were operations manager in UNRWA, and I'd be making around $140,000, $150,000 a year, with fantastic benefits, why would I want that to ever go away? Okay, but I think that's just it's a small petty way of looking at it. It should be looked at strategically, that you have a problem with perpetuating a conflict through humanitarian aid, and what happens is that people will not trust humanitarian aid if they identify it with being political and biased and impartial. So beneficiaries somewhere else will not receive their aid because nobody's going to work with the aid provider out of distrust. Maybe they will also name and shame us. The only organization that does not name and shame is the International Committee for the Red Cross. They practice discreet diplomacy. They will meet you, they will tell you what they have to say, in no one, they'll let you have it, but nothing ever gets leaked. And the result is that most of the countries in the world, including Israel, find it easier to work with an organization which does not come and immediately allot the blame to you, Mm-hmm. So there are benefits in being discreet, as the ICRC is, and not political and loud and flamboyantly aggressive,
Fascinating.
No, it's getting a bit heavy, no? I mean, it's getting a bit heavy, this business, no? I mean,
and but so you made Aliyah. Which doors were slammed in your face, by the way?
Sorry, I gotta excuse me for a sec. I'm sorry, it's just the nose. Guys, I'm sick.
You should stay away from the white stuff, man,
Yeah. So what doors were slammed in your face?
No, I'm just talking about, when you open the door for a lady in Israel.
Oh, literally doors were slammed.
And many times I won't say even thank you, or when you go through a door, you get the door slammed in your face because nobody ever looks across the shoulder to see if you're coming through the door.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've been in the country from 1983. How many years does that? I don't know. It's a long time.
Better not to count.
I can't get used to it. I can't get there's some things I simply can't get used to, And this makes me crazy every time, right?
What else?
What else makes me crazy? In Hebrew, you say, "Ani tzarich."
Yeah, I need.
I need, or "Ani rotze," I want.
Yeah.
So you go into a restaurant and you say, "Ani rotze,"
or tavili, get me,
or tavili, get me or bring me.
Yeah.
And this is okay, I think, in Israel, amongst Israelis. I don't think anybody gets offended, by the way. They couldn't give a shit,
Yeah.
When I translate that, I cringe. I cringe in restaurants still. I say, what do you mean? Bring me. Tell me, what are you, what's wrong with you, man?
So what do you say?
I said, Efshar b'vakasha, ani mevakesh, and I can assure you my children say the same thing. I mean, come on, some civil behavior.
Yeah.
I think we've lost a lot of that in Israel. Civility is not our strong point. I mean...
No, I think that there's a certain existential state here that doesn't allow for people to give a shit about day-to-day civility.
Why does our difficulties, why should they impact saying thank you or please? I don't know. I mean, I don't see why. I don't see why should that prevent someone keeping the door open for me when I go through?
It's the pathology of a survivor. It's you get what I'm saying?
But it wasn't
we
like
are
that in
survivors.
in the 50s.
I mean, I don't know. I wasn't around in the 50s or 60s, but I feel like this couldn't have come from nowhere. And I feel like Jews have been surviving for centuries, and that's kind of forged us into these...
I think we're a neurotic nation. I mean, for sure, after I don't know how much, 7, 8 wars and 3,000 years of persecution, I don't know how many pogroms.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just need to look at the map, you know, and first of all, if you can find Israel on the map, and then you look at the neighborhood. I mean, you don't have to be a Harvard graduate to understand it's a shitty neighborhood, you know. So, I mean, that's enough to put you into, you're right, to put you into some sort of mental distress, right? I mean, where's the Valium, right? That's the first, I mean, give me the Prozac. But,
So that's what you stood in line for in the pharmacy?
good.
It brings us
good.
back to that.
I mean, you know, you're good.
On point. I'm an optimist, though, as opposed to no. I mean, I don't know what it was like in the 50s or 60s, but I have a feeling that because it derives from that neuroses that has been thousands of years in the making, that now that we have a nation, and as we feel more and more and more and more secure, then it'll slowly shed itself and we'll become a more civil people. I hope.
I hope so too. I think that we have a lot of work.
Yeah.
We have our work cut out for us, you know. I sometimes am a little bit angry at Theodore Herzl, you know, because instead of sending us to this, you know, godforsaken neighborhood, you should have, I don't know, find some Jewish relic in Texas, you know, or you know, remains of the Second Temple in, I don't know where, North Carolina.
Nova Scotia.
It would make a paradise from it.
That's
no problem.
awful. Nova Scotia?
Yeah.
North Carolina sounds good.
No,
Nova Scotia.
But it's better. It's better than here. Believe me. And send us over there, and I tell you, we'll make good things happen. You know. I mean,
I don't know, man. I don't think I'd survive 2 days in Nova Scotia.
it's that bad.
There's like 4 days of rain here, and listen to me.
But you are happy about, you said earlier, maybe before we started recording, that you love your life here.
Yes, I do.
And that life here is amazing and stuff like that.
Okay.
But you know, I've been having conversations with Israelis who work in Silicon Valley, and their life is significantly better. They're way happier and more satisfied than they were here. And life, it seems that in other places, it's the little things, okay? Like if you go to Italy, yeah, our life are amazing. You know, we make ends meet, the economy is booming, that's great. But in the end of the day, maybe it's not enough because even I just saw a video about a supermarket in China. And I was so envious because they're light years ahead of us with technology, with, you know, how life is just easier, with innovation everywhere. And we are, in many aspects, we're a third world country. and today, when you can take your things and go someplace else, the question, that's what Eitan said earlier, that I'm the pessimist. The question,
no, but you're getting the dosage of it.
Yeah.
But
you know what I'm saying, though?
no, I know.
So
completely.
why
Yes,
you
I
came
do.
from Austria?
Yeah.
Why not Austria?
I tell you, I have a very good friend in Kfar Kish where I live, and we had this argument. One of the people in Kfar Kish, a young man, you know, is leaving with his wife to Tasmania. Tasmania is, you know, southwest of
Australia. Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Another 100 miles. Take a right. Another 100 miles. You know.
Yeah.
And he can't get over it. I said, you know, David is his name. I said, David, what's the problem? He said, why did he leave everything? Why did he, you know, he's abhorred that he should have left Israel. You know, I said to David, Azma, so what? So he wants to leave Israel. What, did he sign up for Israel for the rest of his life? I think not. I think there's room for everyone. There are people that, why is there a brain drain from Israel? Why are people, you know, I know 2 people at Stanford right now doing their postdoctorates and doing their research at Stanford. Why? You know, because they earn 4 times as much as they would here, and they have a lab that in your wet dreams you can't imagine having at Tel Aviv University. So why shouldn't they go? Okay? The question is, do they come back? Does it matter? Don't know. It's not as if we have an exodus of people coming out of Israel, you know. I'm not sure we do.
We
In the
kinda do.
academic,
No, but it
specifically
may
in the
seem-
academia.
no, but
Academic and
exactly.
technology and high tech.
But I think it okay. I think in we're talking now within our circles. I
Yeah.
think we hear a lot about this, but most people stay in Israel. Okay, but you're right. The high tech people, my son, for example, you know, he's asking himself a question now. Should I go with my American girlfriend or whatever to the States? He has he's a software engineer from the Technion, and he has an MBA from Recanati, and make a fortune. Or should I stay here and make a fortune?
But less of a fortune.
but-
less of a fortune.
But fortune, what I'm saying is, fortune, it's not a question of money. It's not even a question of comfort. I understand exactly what you're saying. Believe me, I've been to the States on speaking engagements, on tours, for work, for fun. I grew up in Europe. I know what comfort means. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, you have to be there in order to understand how comfortable America is. For
Yeah.
example, I mean, it's unbelievable.
I just had this discussion with a friend who came, Effie. He came from Silicon Valley, and he told us the thing that bothers him the most is the culture of the water boiler here. Because here, all your day-to-day life revolves around the water boiler, which you need to manually...
Replace.
You manually turn it
and heat
on
the water.
to heat the water. Whereas he told me, in my home, I have hot water all the time. How come? I don't know. I just do. I never asked. I mean, somewhere there's a gazillion, a bowl with gazillion liters of water, of hot water, and they keep getting warm. And here, all your life, did you turn it on? Did you turn it off? I want to take a shower in the morning, so I'll turn it on. So that's a
And
little
you'll pay
example.
twice as much in the winter because there's no sun, and you have to actually turn on your electric water boiler.
Right.
Yeah.
So in his place, like in America, in the Silicon Valley at least, you don't think about it.
But I'd
about
like to
your
tell.
hot water.
I'd like to tell you something. Because I'm quite a lot in Vienna also.
Okay.
And I grew up there, so I miss it, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you something though. This is the country for people that are a little bit border psychotic. Okay. So for example, Israel is a place where you can be angry and happy within 30 seconds.
Uh-huh.
Where someone will give you their car if you need to go somewhere. Because why not? Or take the keys to my house. If you need it.
But won't stop for an ambulance to pass.
I don't see that happen a lot.
Really?
I don't see that
They
happen
will
a
cut
lot.
you in the highway, though.
Look,
I've
Violently.
never seen anybody stop for an ambulance.
seriously.
Yeah. I mean, in the States, it's like, I'm talking like, they'll move aside if they're still. But if you're on a moving highway and you hear an ambulance, you stop on the shoulders.
Really?
Yeah. You don't just move aside,
But
you
no
stop.
but our roads are just so crappy. There are no shoulders, man.
That's
So
part
you-
of the problem.
You were saying
No, so I'm saying, so what this country...
about Vienna.
Yeah, what this country allows is you to be real. You're allowed to be angry. I think in the States many times, what I noticed is that there's this fear of pissing people off. So what do you talk about in America? About the weather, about NFL? I mean,
Right. You need to be very careful
you have
nowadays.
to be so careful, You have to be so careful. It's not different in Vienna. You need to be very careful not to piss people off or to say a joke that may be misinterpreted or to, this doesn't exist in Israel. In for better or for worse. Okay, because I complained about lack of civility, but on the other hand, there's a lot of freedom to be a little bit, original and crazy, and to joke with someone on the bus. If you try to joke with someone in Vienna,
They'll put you in a camp
they'll
and gas you.
oh god.
Wow.
Man.
That took a dark turn. I told you he was a pessimist.
But I think you should restart the medication. Or, I don't know,
I'm high on life, man.
dude. No, but
But yeah.
But this is the friends we have, and
Right.
and my family, and the life that is full, you know, of madness and happiness and anger and frustration. And you know, for the first time in my life, I feel, ever since I came here, that I can call a place home, right? And that's a lot for me. And that my children were born here, very important for me. And that when they are asked, where are you from? They'll say Israel. They won't say, I'm from Vienna. When I was in Vienna, my father's French, my mother's Israeli. I was born in the Belgian Congo. I lived in Pakistan for a couple of years. We went to Vienna.
Thank God they're not from Pakistan, your kids.
No, but we lived well in Pakistan, don't worry. And, they can say, well, I'm from Israel.
And it's worth the risk. The risks.
This,
No answer to this.
this
question.
is it worth the risks? This is a difficult question.
Yeah, because
It puts me in trepidation, just the thought of it.
right.
I mean, I know people that, that with their children in combat units and stuff, don't sleep at night,
Yeah.
What kind of a life is that? So I can understand why someone would want to go live in Berlin. I really do. I don't judge on that thing. I really don't judge. It's really not for me to say, and
But how do you feel about, you're talking specifically about Jews who go and move abroad?
yeah,
You don't
Israelis.
have any criticism.
Israelis. Yeah.
And then how do you feel about when Israelis or even maybe Americans who move here and then move back but how do you feel about them criticizing Israel's political situation or policies?
Right.
You don't feel
Very
Okay.
positively.
enough said.
Okay, enough said. So, Daniel, what can we plug? You give talks, right?
I do. I teach, and I also speak on topics I mentioned during our conversation on helping communities deal with the anti-Israel bias. Briefings. I was with AIPAC in the States. I was on the Hill. Years ago. So yes, just explaining to people or giving people tools, in communities to understand what is happening on the ground without it being, and I am not a propagandist. I have seen the bad things, I've seen the good things, and I can talk about both. But I also know where we can proudly represent who we are. And we don't need to be afraid, not of Berkeley campuses and not of anything. So I think it's important that people are exposed to that polemic, to that discussion, in a sort of a balanced way, but that they get some food for thought and some tools on how to deal with the incessant criticism that Israel is facing. And that's one of the things that I do.
So people can get in touch with you on Facebook, through email.
Correct.
And you have a website?
I'm working on it right now.
Okay, so
I'm
So-
working on it right now.
either if it's ready by the time this episode goes up, then we'll put a link, and if not, then we'll maybe leave it in the comments.
Great.
But if you guys want, search Daniel Beaudoin.
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 Yeah, and so highly recommended. Obviously, incredible life story. You lecture at Tel Aviv University.
I do, correct.
So search for him. Get in touch with him if you guys are interested. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for having
reaching
me.
out.
It's a
For
great
joining.
Thank you very
Such
much.
a pleasure. So before we go, we have a collaboration. Eitan, I'm sparing you because you're sick.
Thank
You're
you.
dying. We have a collaboration with the Jewish Journal, jewishjournal.com. Check them out. They're amazing. Great news source, content, podcasts. They're great. So go and check them out. And we accept donations, guys. So
So do I.
So, okay. Well,
Everybody accepts donations.
yeah, nowadays. We accept donations. We're not an NGO though. So if you feel like helping us out, we're doing it on our free time. Go to twinjb.com/donate. And I just want to say we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And we also post these episodes with video on our Facebook page. So
And we're on Spotify and everywhere podcasts are. Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. And we need iTunes reviews, guys. So if you reached as far as now in the episode, please go to iTunes if you have an iPhone and give us a 5-star rating and write that we're awesome and amazing.
You can write that we suck, just as long as you give us 5 stars. Write whatever you want.
Who gives a shit, right?
Yeah,
Just as long
their
as
language parsing isn't good enough to understand.
Also, state who's your favorite, Eitan or myself. So
Wow, man. That's harsh.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Bye.
Bye, guys.